Student housing is such a unique industry. The more unique an industry is, the more important it is for that industry to have a resource and a platform to share ideas and data, to determine best practices, and a platform to simply promote networking among the professionals in that industry. That's what we are setting out to provide with Student Housing Insight. But what's even more unique about the student housing industry is how unique those professionals are. They want to make a positive impact on the students and the university communities they serve. They understand they have an opportunity to touch the future. They come to work every day looking for ways to make that future bright. If you're one of those people, come be a part of Student Housing Insight. All right, everybody. Welcome to ShopTalk. If you can, I just want to make sure that you can hear my voice. So if somebody could say something in the chat about hearing my voice, that would be fantastic. All right. Let's see here. Let's get this. All right, guys, welcome to Shop Talk, December Shop Talk, the last one for the year. Thanks for those that are in our chat. I also just launched a poll a little bit ago. If you guys could, if you see that, if you could just answer that, that would be fantastic as well. Want to go through a couple of different things. For those that don't know me, I'm Wesley Dees. I'm the CEO of Student Housing Insight, and we're the producer of this monthly webinar. Typically, we try to do this on the second week of every month. We're kind of going back and forth between Tuesday and Thursday. I think we're probably going to stick with the Thursday routine. It seems to be a little bit easier for everybody. So to go through a couple of housekeeping things, we are using a platform called Webinar Jam, and there's a couple of things I just want to go over really quick. Highly encourage you guys to use the chat and speak with each other. That will be over on the right-hand side of the screen. You can also ask a question. If you got a question for myself or any of the panelists, ask that you put it there versus in the chat. It's a little bit easier for me to keep up with. You can also request to speak if you want to come onto the live stage and ask our panelists a question or just make a comment. Again, highly encourage you to do that as well. Just hit that request to speak button on the right hand of your screen up above the chat. And if you do that, you'll go through a couple of different audio and video checks. So just to make sure that we can hear you. Well, guys, let's go ahead and get started with our update from the National Multi-Housing Council. Dave, how are you doing?
Fantastic. Want to make sure you can hear me.
I can hear you just fine.
All right.
I hope you had a good Thanksgiving.
Yeah, the weather's a little crummy here in Washington. My Wi-Fi's trying to go to sleep a little bit, so been going in and out today. But in any case, can't believe we've already gotten to the end of 22. It's seems like we just started, but it is what it is. And happy holidays to everybody, and hopefully everybody's going to get a little time off at the end of the year before we get going on this again. As always, we want to give you a little bit of an update in terms of what's happening here in Washington, D.C. that may impact the student housing industry. So let's get going on that. One of the things that the White House, as I gave you guys an update last month, has been really focused on housing, affordability, et cetera. And while some of these things may not directly impact student housing, they may have some impact as well. And so among them, there's been this push for resident protection. Been a lot of advocates pushing for eviction protections and a variety of different things. The White House has engaged the industry, including NMHC. We were invited to a series of conversations hosted by the administration talking about resident protection, whether that means eviction protection, whether it means source of income, meaning do you have to accept certain types of vouchers, or even as far as rent control. So in these conversations, I describe it as they brought out this tray of a whole bunch of different things. I won't use some of the language that I used in describing it to other people, but it's kind of like, let's put these all on the table and start talking about them. And they were going to do some announcement this month. I think they're still trying to figure out what that looks like. It may turn into something like Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae loans, which the student housing industry certainly relies on them as a financing source, may have some of those protections that I just described as a requirement. And so those are things that, we've been spending a lot of time internally, also talking to our members about this. And so stay tuned for that. You should, without a doubt, expect them to make some type of announcement. Again, not sure it'll be this year, but it will certainly be early January if, in fact, it does occur. We have a new Congress coming in January. So, what are they going to try and do before the end of the year? Before those who are in place, especially on the House side, which is currently Democratic through the end of the year and will shift over to the Republicans, are they going to try and pass any legislation? So among the things, got to fund the government, clearly a big thing, and they have just simply finished negotiating some of that. There's a little short-term extension, before they try and extend that over a longer period of time. And so that is an overall impact to how the government runs, which has an impact on all of us. And so every year it seems like I describe it as students who get assignments at the beginning of a semester and wait until the last week before they actually start working on it. And that's kind of what Congress does every single year. FHFA issued their final affordable housing goals this week. Why is this important, student housing? One of the things that agency has been doing is pushing affordable housing requirements for Freddie and Fannie up. And so the more they push those up, the more difficult it is for student housing to get financed through Fannie and Freddie. I am putting together a little task force with some, industry members to see if there's ways to work with the enterprise FHFA and see if we can figure out a way to get student housing loans qualified under the affordable housing goals, which would certainly be a financing benefit for the student housing industry. And the last thing I'm going to touch on is the beneficial ownership, which I've covered on and off on this. This is a whole idea here is kind of a corporate transparency. Who are the owners behind the properties that we buy, and whether it's student housing, whether it's conventional, whether it's businesses, we are a frequent user of LLCs. And the idea here between the Corporate Transparency Act and beneficial ownership is to make the quote unquote every single LLC comply and put out that type of information. And so that's going to go live January of next year, not 23, but 24. And literally this morning, the agency that actually puts out those regulations issued another proposed rule that they need to implement. That came out this morning as well. This has an impact broadly in the industry because everybody who has an LLC will have to comply with this and report into this new system. So that's a quick update from here in Washington. A lot of other things that we're working on, but I choose not to put some of those in there because I don't think they necessarily have direct impacts on student housing. But look forward to continue to keep you guys in the loop as we work on things here regarding our industry.
Well, thanks, Dave. Just, as we're thinking about this upcoming first quarter, anything else that NMHC is doing, either from an event standpoint or anything else that we need to make sure everybody's aware of?
Yeah, so we have our annual conference, and historically, it's really kind of been a deal-related conference. It's been by far the largest multifamily conference in the industry. Really kind of kicks off the year, and I will tell you historically that student housing industry has not been a huge participant in that, but we're planning a meeting with a number of our members there, and I will tell you that the registrants for the student housing industry are actually pretty significant, even at our annual conference now. So we're in Las Vegas, so if you want to come to Vegas, highly encourage it. It's a lot of deal talk. It's a lot of transactional financing, et cetera. We don't have any exhibit halls or anything of that nature, but it is by far the preeminent multifamily conference. And I will add that, we now have a great representation from the student housing industry. But as people are looking for financing or capital, great opportunity to do that. So that'll kick off on January 31st and run to the first couple of days in February. So if you're coming, hope to see you there in Las Vegas.
Well, fantastic. Well, Dave, thanks so much. I don't see any questions popping up for you, but if we have any, I will definitely pass them on to you.
Great. Thanks a lot.
All right. Take care.
Take care.
Charlie, how are you doing?
Thank goodness Delta Airlines gets you there on time. Been in New York this week, so feeling good. Excited to walk through. And it's nice when everything's going well and I have nice things to say and no one hates me. So
there you go.
That is the key component here. I will say, Wes, I did like the Dancing Santa. Normally I tune that out, but that was good stuff.
I really worked hard on finding something that I felt like everybody could enjoy, get them into the spirit.
There we go.
Glad somebody appreciated it. Well, hey, I'm going to start pulling up your slide deck here in just a second. But of course, this is the next segment that we do in these things, which is to start getting into your data and what's been happening over the past 3 to 4 weeks as it relates to pre-leasing for fall 23. So we've got a fantastic panel, and I wanted to go ahead and have them introduce themselves. So, Ron, I'll let you start.
Okay. Thank you, Wes. First of all, thank you for having me. And I apologize. I swear in real life, the stripes of my shirt aren't moving like they appear to be on video. So I hope that's not too just there. That's better now with the larger view. But anyway, so I'm Ron Koritz, and I am a Senior Vice President with Blue Vista Capital Management. And I head up the asset management function for our student housing portfolio as well. And I've been with Blue Vista for about 12 years now. And Blue Vista, we currently own about 30 student housing properties, over 15,000 beds. In 2022, we weren't as active as most years, and I suspect that most of our partners, friends, competitors would say the same thing. We bought 3 properties this year for about $50 million, plus we have a land parcel that we're in the process of buying at an A-plus location. Last year, I think, was a more typical year. We were a little bit more active. We bought 5 properties for about $270 million and 2 other land parcels that will both within 2 or 3 years become $100+ million properties.
Nice. Ben.
All right. Thanks, Wes. Thanks for having me. I'm Ben Modleski, Managing Director of Strategy and Research for Core Spaces. I've been with Core since its inception. We currently own 37 properties, about 22,000 beds nationally. We're both developers and managers, but also acquirers of student housing, bringing on board approximately 10 communities over the past year.
Well, fantastic. Well, hey, Charlie, before we get into it, I know you guys have recently launched the new platform. How's that going? Anything you want to share with us in regards to that?
Yes. Once you get back from the holidays, it's going to be 10 times better. We're going to roll out a lot more from an exporting side customization standpoint, some other details surrounding the enrollment data, as well as some sales and debt information. So look for that coming in when you get back from the holidays, when you're done with your families. I got a present for you as well. So that should all take place over the coming 3 weeks or so. But should be great. Yeah, very excited about the feedback thus far, though.
Good, good. Well, let's jump into this. It's a little bit of a different report than we typically look at on this, because we're looking at the past 3 weeks, and you wanted to dive into the kind of what's happening from a floor plan standpoint, and take a look at that. Before I get into it, anything that stood out to you that you wanted to bring up to the audience?
Yes. So what we normally do is most of you are familiar with receiving our biweekly report, and then we have a month end. So the mid-month, we show how things have trailed. And then at the month end, when we'll take out the regional with the maps that you're probably used to seeing. So in this instance, since I know Ron and Ben both work on the asset management side with Blue Vista and Core, partially, we wanted to kind of dive in a little bit more to what's going on from the individual product types, unit types, excuse me. And the one thing that continues to be great, specifically at the 4 bedrooms, is that you continue to see those grow from a percentage of beds in student housing or unit type perspective. They're the largest. Lot of different I would say functionality makeups of the 4 bedroom units in student housing, with 4, 2s, 2.5s. Cottage products are pretty predominantly 4s as well. So it's great to see that those are continuing to grow. And if you go to you see 42.7, but you see, as we look at this from a year-over-year perspective, one thing that continues to show out, and again, I know Dave mentioned affordable housing, and affordability continuing to be a large piece of the puzzle as we look at this rate growth, which we'll get into here in a moment, with the industry being about 8.3% ahead year-over-year. You see the 4 bedrooms right there, almost, 8.8%? Yeah, I think so, if my math is okay. No, that's not right. But anyways, it looks, the 4s, the 3s, and the 2s and the 1s, seemingly your most predominant floor plans in student housing continue to grow. The larger unit types with the 5s and 6s and studios as well, more favorable to the newer inventory over the last 5, 6, 7 years. So again, great to see the floor plan level numbers shaking out where, minus the 3 bedrooms, there's not much that's falling behind. As you can see here, as I mentioned, the 4 bedrooms are the largest from a weighting perspective, and really driving home a lot of that growth that we're seeing, as the highest difference between year over year at 8.3%. So it's great to see. I'd like to turn it over to Ron and Ben. Really try to want to understand from the different products in the Vista. And you have a lot of new inventory with the development side and the acquisition side, as well as some legacy assets. And I know Ben traditionally build the Class A pedestrian product, but have been buying a lot of, I wouldn't say a lot of, but a handful of legacy or vintage assets on the value add side. Walk me through what you're seeing in your portfolios from a leasing perspective. Where are you really seeing the large jumps, and kind of put some context to these numbers in the real world?
Yeah, sure. I can take that first. Overall, and when we're looking at like the past 3 or 4 weeks, we've only gone up about 1.1% per week over the last 3 or 4. So things have considerably slowed down from what they were back in September, October. Our same store has increased 2.2%. Our value add acquisitions about 6.4% over that same time. So most of the fast and furious leasing came, very, very early on for Core. We are seeing across the portfolio, the 4s, 5s, and 6s slow down a bit. That's sometimes attributable to the fact that those are already gone, at least in the 5s and 6s case. The 1s, 2s, and 3s are all picking up, and across the board, though, we're super happy with where we are with leasing this year.
Hey Ben, are you as we look back at this first slide, we're still seeing kind of nationally 1 to 2 every single week up until last Friday, which I think is fantastic given how quick everything got started. Just wondering, I know we're only 4 days into this week, but now that most of the schools have gone on, onto their break, are you guys completely dead, or are you still seeing any traction?
Yeah, normally at this time of year, we're completely dead. So the time that finals begin until the time that classes resume back in January is pretty dead for us. Although this year, we're actually seeing a pickup after finals that have concluded and before the students have gone home. And this is especially true at our new developments.
Gotcha.
And Wes, we're seeing similar trends to what Ben just described. Our overall portfolio is about 46% pre-leased, and that's about 8% ahead of the same time last year. We actually have seen maybe a little bit more activity over the last 4 weeks than Ben has seen. We've had 9% over the last 4 weeks, which absolutely was surprising, because once you hit that Thanksgiving time, between Thanksgiving and Christmas, we get the slowdown that you talked about. Yeah. But per floor plan, first of all, we view it so much on the floor plan as kind of a property to property. This is great stuff that Charlie does, because it allows us to look at it as a portfolio. But we focus so much on the individual property for floor plan to floor plan. But that said, we've seen similar trends, and we still have our studios 1s and 2s are a bit ahead of our 3s and 4s. And that's mainly because of course, the fewer number of bed spaces that you're leasing.
Yeah. Yeah, Charlie, not to turn this into an infomercial or anything, but the one update that you guys have been able to make to Ron's point, now we can go into a market and actually pick pick the properties that we feel most closely, are our competitors, and that's just a fantastic feature in the new update. So thanks for doing that.
Sorry it took so long, but no, it's interesting, because we look at from a standpoint of when the data is changing. I mean, we've had, as we'll see here, as we get over to the rates trends, if you want to, this is a good segue into there, Wes. Normally, and again, I know Ron and I look like we went to college together, which we are close. We're the best of friends. But if you look at kind of the events, kids go home for Thanksgiving, they come back, and then again, maybe I'm speaking from experience. If my mother's listening, she'll definitely corroborate this. But you can't go home without having the lease. So I think there's a little bit more of that. Plus all the things that I guess the benefits of COVID with the online leasing, the touring that everybody's doing. You can do a lot of that from your computers as you're sitting in a study room all day procrastinating. So little tidbit to what may be going on. But as we look at the individual floor plan, average rate per beds increases nationally. I think it's great specifically to see a few different things here. One, on the 1 bedrooms, you're seeing pretty large, I would say, increase there from your most expensive floor plan. Again, we talk about affordability. We talk about, is student housing on this? Is there a ceiling to where this can go? I mean, if we're 8.3% ahead on pre-lease and rates are on average about 9% above, there's strong demand. So the fundamentally looks fantastic. If interest rates would go down just a little bit or behave, we'd see a little bit more activity. But from a national perspective, up 9.2% this time. We would probably envision somewhat of a bell curve continuing to climb a little bit. And then once we get towards the late leasing for the handful of markets that may need to either keep rate or drop rate a little bit, we may see that be kind of a common theme, roughly anywhere from 9. I think we had an 11% for the beginning half there in late October, as Ben mentioned, when things were flying off the shelf. But if we look at this specifically, again, 6 bedrooms being the smaller, I guess the smallest number of beds that we're tracking from an individual unit type standpoint, but still 16%, where again, predominantly in a lot of the newer projects, as well as the cottage products, you're seeing 16%. We're talking with clients where it's almost a PR issue that they're getting some of these increases. So it's great to see that. And again, as we look at 3 bedrooms to 4 bedrooms, even 5s, great outperformance there from a year-over-year rate perspective, which again, not to be commercial, allows you to make those decisions where if you're pro forma, 8% for the property, you may be able to get 10 on the 3s or 10 on the 1s, and you may only be able to get 5-6% on the 2s. So just puts it into context, just what is really moving. Again, market specific, product specific, time of year, it all depends. But I'm
So-
having a conversation. Go ahead. Sorry.
Give me a little bit of background on the, the 5,006 bedroom units that you're tracking. Is that, you mentioned cottage? Is all of that in cottage? Is there any of that that's
so a lot of our newer devs, newer properties, there's some existing cottage products that were built from, I guess, 11 to present era, have 6 bedrooms there. But as we look at the product type that it's most common with, it is your newer inventory over the last 5 years. So whether it's pedestrian class A or some sort of a cottage product, that's where you see most of those. They weren't that common unless it's a scattered site portfolio or individual, someone busted out a wall on a 4.2 and now it's a 6.4. So that's why you see such a lower number there, just because, again, that's not going to be the predominant unit mix for some of your legacy inventory.
So, Ron and Ben, does this mean we're going to see more developments of 5s and 6 bedroom floor plans, or you think that's it's kind of an anomaly?
Yeah, we actually have very few 6 bedroom floor plans in our portfolio, though we are going to have some in our development in Gainesville. But, and so I feel almost not qualified to speak to that 6 bedroom.
It's such a small piece of it.
Never stopped me. Not having being sure has never stopped me before. But I think, so that being said, I think a little bit of why you're seeing all this activity of the 6 bedroom is it's the population that tends to lease earlier. It's a lot of times it's the Greeks. I suspect that you'd see that it's people who come in as groups of 6, whereas in our 4 bedrooms, we have so many people who are the 4 roommates will not know each other. And I suspect that the 6 bedrooms are people who are targeting this is the group of friends that are going to live together. And if they don't live in that purpose built right across from campus, they're going to live in the proverbial student ghetto in a house together.
Gotcha.
Yeah, we don't have very many 6s as well, although I do anticipate us building more 6s in the future as the cities that we service allow. But our data also shows that the 5s and 6s have the highest increase in rents. But part of that is because demand was incredible upon opening, and we knew it was going to be incredible upon opening. So those unit types got the biggest percent increase right off the bat. So when leasing was at 0, they already may have been at like 6% or 8% increase, where the other unit types were at 3 or 4% of an increase. Yep. And second, we give renewals a lower increase in rent than we do the new market rate leases coming in. And the renewal rate on the 6 and 5 beds is substantially lower than it is for all the other unit types that we have. So they're getting less renewals, which means that there's more people paying market rate and more people paying that higher percent increase there.
Gotcha.
It's great context. I think also again, being predominantly in some of these newer inventory, it's an easier sell to be able to pay, I hear $950 as opposed to paying, $1,300 for some of these smaller unit types too, and being able to live with your friends now that everybody was kind of siloed off for a couple of years. So that's great context, Ben. I didn't even think about the differences in the renewals there.
So, guys, I want to ask just kind of 2 general questions because, Ben, you hit on the one with between the 2 portfolios as far as your value add. I appreciate you mentioning that because I had a question on that. And actually, before I ask this next question, I just want to go ahead and, for those folks that are on our turn panel, if you'll go ahead and hit the request to speak button, I'll start bringing you guys on in just a second. But Ron, from an asset management standpoint, how is this velocity, this early in the season, how is that impacting things with you and your team?
It's making us look good. We were trying to take all the credit ourselves, so I'm disappointed to know it's not just us that are seeing things going well. No, Wes, the answer is we're raising rate. I think like so many of our peers, so many of us employ the tiered pricing structure. It's the lower rate for renewals than new leases. And as time goes on, we try to raise our rates, and we're pushing through those tiers quicker and raising rate faster and having more frequent calls. We look at pre-leasing daily, but have formal calls with our teams weekly, and it's not one comment at all that we'll have that call on a Wednesday, Thursday, just saying let's raise rate. I think we also like to be really thorough in our analysis on why we raise rate and what we do to raise rate. And when things are going so well, sometimes you say, you know what, great. In the meantime, until we have our thorough analysis, just push everything up $5, and then when we have our more detailed analysis, we can explain why and have more data behind it.
Gotcha. So last question, enrollment numbers from the universities were for this fall were finalized in late October. Anything from an enrollment standpoint that has surprised you, either the growth or the loss at any institutions?
Yeah, so for core, we're really happy with the amount of growth that we're seeing. So at the universities that we service, we're seeing a 2.85% average year-over-year increase in total enrollment. So that's really fantastic. The biggest amount of that enrollment, no surprise, is out west, where the universities were hit a little bit harder by COVID and seemed to scale back their enrollment over the past couple of years. It's now coming back fast and furious. So very happy to see that. Also, international enrollment is almost back to pre-pandemic levels. I think that's a little bit quicker than people thought it was going to be. And that's good for us as well.
Yeah, and I'd say what surprised me almost is what we're seeing seems to differ from the national headlines, which is enrollment is decreasing. And I realize that's because that's looking at all colleges and the for-profit universities. But in the areas where we concentrate, and so many of our fellow colleagues concentrate in the Power 5 schools and what we call kind of the schools of first choice, we are seeing an increase of enrollment across the board almost everywhere. I guess Syracuse surprised me as a isolated example of a school that had a slight negative blip, but it was only 200 students. But we're just not seeing decreases very many places.
Yeah. Tier 2 and tier 3, I'm certainly seeing it, but just
yes.
And the community colleges have been hit the hardest, but yeah, that's fantastic. Well, guys, I appreciate it so much. We're going to move on to our next turn panel. Charlie, thanks again. Look forward to seeing next month's report. And Ron and Ben, thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right, guys. While I'm bringing these other panelists up, I want to just really quickly tell you about an industry event that's coming up if you haven't heard about it already. The third annual Student Housing 360 conference by IMN is happening next month at the end of January. And they did something kind of special for us for this audience. If you haven't registered yet and you want to get 15% off, you can go to their website. I'll push the website out here in just a second. But you can use code INSIGHT, totally misspelled it, INSIGHT 15 for 15% off. So I'll push that out here to you in just a second. Well, guys, it's never too early to talk about turn. So let's get into that. I think I'm missing one person though. Could be Chantel, it looks like. Hey, Ron, I'm going to ask you just to
X out of here.
Yeah, there we go. I got him. All right, Chantel, if you're there and you can hear us, if you'll just raise your hand, I will bring you guys on board. But yeah, so it doesn't seem like it was, 4 months ago now. We're finishing up turn, and now it's time to start talking about it again. But had a fantastic LeaseCon, TurnCon last week here in Charlotte with the folks from Interface Conferences. And it was good to see some of these faces there. And I wanted to, between myself and the leadership committee, we kind of really felt like December is probably a perfect time to start talking about turn, and specifically about maybe some of the things we learned last year and review some of the data. So that's what this panel is going to be about. First, let me just go ahead and get started with introducing the panel. Zeb, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so my name is Zeb Thomas. I am the operations manager over Turn for the entire Scion Group. I've been in student housing for about 11 years and went through many turns. This past turn, I helped oversee all roughly 128 properties from start to finish, whether that was bidding out and looking at our quarterly inspections, getting them on our turn platforms, just handling any one-off issues that would come up. So kind of everything turn is kind of what I do on a 365-day basis.
Glad there's more than just these two other guys that are having to deal with turn on a 365 basis. Lincoln, while we're waiting on Chantel, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yep, I did get a heads up that she didn't pass her audio test, although it's the same setup. She's trying to pass to come on. Okay. So I'm Lincoln Ogata with Easy Turn. I've been in and or around student housing for the last 14 years in some capacity. Like Wes said and Zeb, we do this year round. Obviously, we have a large inspection part of our platform as well, but we do this year round. So again, excited to be on here. And I said yesterday in our pre-talk, it's just fun to know this many people, even if it's just 5 of us, enjoy talking about turn so much. So happy to be here.
Gotcha. Chantel, I did put you on mute there. I know you're on site today, so whenever you're ready to speak, you can just unmute yourself. But Jesse, let's go with you next.
Thanks, Wes. I'm Jesse Baker from the Turn Company. I've been in the industry for 11 years now. This year I was directly involved with 7 turns, and Turnco as a whole did 55 turns. Actually 56. We did one project before the traditional turn season started.
Fantastic. Chantel?
Yeah, so I have been in student housing for going on 10 years now, with over half of that time with asset living.
Well, fantastic. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Small headset hiccup, but this past summer I oversaw several American properties and one in turn in Montreal.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Let's talk to another fellow international student housing person. Well, hey, I wanted to start out some things with data that specifically Easy Turn and Turnco were able to put together based over the last 2 years. Lincoln, you got a pretty good handle on this. Why don't you go through that for us really quickly?
Yeah. So as far as what's in the portfolio from the data makeup, we have over I guess it's around 9 companies, 160-some thousand beds in this. So it's not everything, but it's a good snippet. We obviously hope to grow that. But this is the data that we have from there, and kind of probably what everybody expected. But actually looking into the numbers was really interesting to actually see kind of the finer details. And then of course, some of you all might see this and say, we didn't see that. Remember, this is, coast to coast. And so your area might've been less affected, your market specifically or whatnot. But yeah, overall, we saw a 12% jump from last year's numbers to this year. That's our taking everything into consideration percent there. And then more finite numbers there, with paint being our largest jump, which I don't think really shocks anybody. Cleaning behind them. And then, we kind of joked about this, yesterday, but steam cleaning up 3%. So, they are kind of the outcast, sounds terrible. They're the outlier. That's what I meant to say. The outlier kind of what we picture as traditional turn vendors. And they only had a 3% jump from last year to this year. But yeah, some interesting numbers that we were able to derive from our data.
So I know this was nationally, but about how many management companies are represented in that?
So management companies around 9. I'm pretty sure we're around 9 for the to be able to show the year over year. We have some more that came on this last, but about 9 to there, and it's over 200 properties though.
Yeah, well, fantastic. Well, Zeb and Chantel, I know you guys have been keeping this information within your own portfolios. So how does that match up with what you guys are seeing?
Yeah, so I mean, this perfectly aligns really with what we saw here at the Scion Group. I mean, we have those outlier markets that, saw a significant increase. We have some that were less, but on average, we were looking about a 12 to 15% increase with our vendors. And, seeing that increase, we start this bidding process really, really early on. So, we're starting to see how that was trending December and January, which really caused us to say, how are we going to start pivoting from there? where do we need to go? How do we need to plan? Because with these increases that we're seeing so early on, it really pushed our teams to be like, okay, what is being done in-house? What are we turning now? How do we pivot with these costs? And then how do we plan for next year? So, I mean, it aligned really well with kind of what we had saw as on our end.
Gotcha.
I think exactly the same in my portfolio. My East Coast and Colorado-based properties saw the most of that increase. The Midwest was a little bit more steady. But I mean, I remember putting forward the budgets for this past year's turn and thinking we were sending some really racy numbers because we were projecting 8, 9, 10%. And then some of the bids came back, 15, 13%. And it was a really impactful year for how we move forward in projections for this coming turn.
Gotcha. Tell us about Montreal. Was it pretty in line there as well, or did you see something different?
Montreal is a special place in how they handle turn. The product we have there is unique. So we turn really quickly. We turn within 24 hours at that asset. So it's a quick, magician show at that asset. Property does great at it, and we did see a slight increase in cost in those labor-based trades, very much in line with its American peers.
Gotcha. Well, hey, let's move over to vendor selection and management. Something that Lincoln brought to my attention this week as we were preparing for it that just kind of, I don't want to say it blew my mind, but I thought was very unique was there was actually a 20% year-over-year increase in properties that switched basically to using a single vendor, be it a general contractor that's subbing everything out, or companies like Turnco. 20% went to single vendor versus all trades having a single vendor or multiple vendors. In our discussions, we talked about some advantages and disadvantages, and Jesse, you're probably closest to this. Look, no one's going to argue that they would love to just have one point of contact when it comes to turn, right? But give us an idea what are some of the other reasons that people are making the switch?
Yeah, so there's really two things. The first one is if you're using the single vendor, they're much more likely to be able to surge resources when we get those curveballs during turn, right? Anyone in student housing has been through that. Oh, we thought we had 20 full paints, we have 80. So they're more likely to be able to adapt to those kind of things as opposed to, say, you're using Joe's local paint company. If you have a reasonable size turn, you might already have every employee from their company on site. And the ability to adapt to a higher workload just isn't there. The other thing is we all know how difficult it is to schedule during turn, and the ability for a property to offload a little bit of that to their single source vendor. If they're going to do painting, cleaning, and carpet cleaning, that vendor can handle some of that, right? They're not going to send the same person to the same spot at the same time because they have the schedule in front of them. Whereas if you were using 3 different vendors, they're not communicating with each other. Even if it's as simple as, hey, catch the little mistakes, right? We intended to do, or we wrote down to do 2 things on the same day. Your single source vendor is going to catch that, right? And smooth out some of the inefficiencies and difficulties in communication.
Got you. Hey, before I want to ask Zeb and Chantel kind of what their thoughts are on it, but I also put up a poll as far as what your preference is for turn vendors. Do you prefer to have one vendor, or the second option? No way, I'm putting all my eggs in one basket. Right now, I would prefer to just use one vendor. Is leading at 66%. So please make sure. I want to make sure we get a good survey on this. But Chantel, how about yourself? What's your feelings on that?
So I definitely have changed my opinion. When I first got into the business, diversification was the name of the game. You really wanted a strong team of multiple vendors that could pitch hit for you. And I think what the changes in the labor market have done has really impacted that impression on me of just reinforcing what was already said of having a national vendor that is able to surge resources. It's invaluable, as you know, this time of year turn. It's critical we get her done, and we get her done well and fast. And you can't do that with some of these more local vendors that really only have a crew or two, or have overextended themselves in that local market. And, you know, they're making hard choices, and they're putting you in positions where you're having to make hard choices. And so definitely, I personally have been converted.
Well, there you go. Zip?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's a mix. You know, I'm still on that mindset of I'm not going to put all my eggs in one basket. We've worked with larger vendors that are across multiple states and, you know, still were burned in the past. So kind of the mindset that we really look into is, you know, we do want our teams to find those vendors that can paint clean, carpet clean, but have multiple of those on site for the off chance. You know, we have the vendors and the properties that are those mom and pop shops that just do the great job every single year. But just like Chantel was saying, is like they're starting to have less and less people to be able to do that because they can't compete with those larger national vendors. And so I think kind of the pivots that we make, you know, we're making sure based off of bed count that you're going to have enough vendors on site that can do multiple services, but making sure that at a corporate level, we're supplying our teams with those national contracts and having them on standby for any of those, you know, potential issues. But I think it has to be a good mix of both. There's going to be those markets that work and the national vendors that work. And then there are some properties that are, you know, 1,800 beds that by no means will I have just one vendor at that property. I will probably have multiple at that property and some on standby. So.
Yeah. Well, hey, we've got a question actually from Julie Bonin at Asset. So Chantel, boss lady's looking. But she says, what are some of the single source vendors that you guys are using? Chantel?
So
That's my company.
So Asset has some really strong relationships that we've used in the past. I know that Turnco has also been a partner that we've used. You know, there are some regional vendors that we have brought in either from East or the West Coast. So it kind of depends. But Turnco has definitely been a partner. I know that we've also used.
Yeah, I mean, for us, we're really looking at the vendors.
Chantel doesn't want to tell anybody because she doesn't want anybody else to use them.
I mean, I can piggyback on some of that too, where, you know, we're definitely looking into those vendors that can do all of it. It's a one-stop shop that can take on some of the facilities portions of it, like Turnco and those other various companies, you know, on those properties that we know always it's just a fire, and we're always having to put it out year after year because it's such a large bed count or it's a harder property. We are leveraging those national contracts this year in those one-stop vendors to be able to get portions of the properties too. But I mean, some of those vendors are going to be like, you know, I guess regionally based. You know, we're looking at not only just the ones that do everything, but the ones that can at least do the paint clean and carpet clean to leverage those national contracts. We don't have any like particular ones per se, but I think again, it's looking at who we used in the past, where they're located, and then building off that from there.
And Wes, I can talk to that too, just from our point of view. I never, you know, you don't know until you know. You know, being able to really see a nice map of the country. There are the bigger ones that really do cover coast to coast, but like both of them just mentioned, I had no idea, honestly, how many regional service people are. There's Florida individuals. I've seen Pennsylvania teams. They cross over some, but they're predominantly in these markets, and they have a pretty good grasp in these certain markets. And when I talked to a lot of the owners and stuff on that sense, they started off as just like a paint vendor. And of course, you know, they are already there. They already have an ability to run it. So they start adding things. I feel like the first ad is clean. And then, you know, hey, we'll buy a couple vans. Let's do carpet clean. Some of them go to that and then go back to being specific. But I have seen so many different regional dots that I'll see pop up on 3 or 4 properties, 5 or 6 properties versus the Turncos, the property doctors, the turnkey solutions, which maybe are a little more widespread. There's a lot of regional ones, and they do seem to be, kind of growing organically.
Yeah. Shout out to the property doctors based in Texas. They were at LeaseCon as well and had some great conversation with them as well. So I will, and we got to keep this a little short because we do have an important update on the Mental Wellness Coalition. And if Richie's out in the audience, if you want to go ahead and request to speak, I'll bring you up shortly. But I want to make sure that we do get to that before the top of the hour. But lessons learned from the last turn, and again, I encourage everybody in the audience to load it up in the chat of what it was for you that maybe it was an important lesson this past year. But start with you guys.
I can go real quick, and I know that sounds crazy for me, but I just when it talks about lessons learned, I would say because of the problems with the smaller companies having a hard time manning right now, starting the process earlier. Of course, I'm always going to pitch earlier. I was, again, from our first podcast, Wes, 5 years ago, I always said a good turn is done from a good inspection. That's still going to be my primary stance, but my next level is the earlier you can get vendors on the books, whether it be a full service or whatever it is, get them as early as possible. So you can start seeing those numbers. And if you're going to get backups to get all that, I saw a lot of properties last year lose their vendors last minute, but they'd only been their vendor for a month and then they quit. That commitment of being with you from January to February is different, and you stay in their ear, you cultivate that relationship. It's different. So that's my big part there.
Yeah, and I mean, I can piggyback off of that. I think some of the big lessons learned from us were really looking at, issues with paint, supplies not coming in, and just honestly the shortages that we see every year. And so really the big takeaway for our company is, setting our teams up for success and making sure that we're eliminating and pulling as much out of the normal turn time frame as we possibly can, whether that's, upping when we're getting furniture delivered, whether that is, a hard focus on the quarterly inspections. We're encouraging our teams, turn wrenches now, order supplies now, repair now, paint now, like make sure that we're color matching during our quarter 2 inspection so we can then pre-plan for those unexpected, oh no, paint's here, it doesn't match. Now we're pivoting to all those full paint. So, I think we're really putting a ton of emphasis on the actual pre-planning upturn to make sure that we can do now when we have the staff, when we have the resources, when we have the time, versus that high stress time, during those 2 weeks. So I think it's, again, just reducing the amount that we have to do during 2 weeks to help offset burnout, stress, and then just, any of those potential shortages that we may see.
Chantel?
I think for me, it's really about creating a sense of nimbleness within my own team and creating an all hands on deck mentality, because more and more with the changes in labor, with people leaving positions suddenly, we're having to do more with less. And I think when you cross train and you focus your GMs not just on their own turn, but the sooner they get that turn completed to go help another resource who had something unexpected come up, in creating that nimbleness across the teams. And then since I got shouted out for not sharing names, also building those relationships early with your Hydro Swifts, your property doctors, your turnkeys who, all do a fabulous job. But I will say, part of the reason I think they've done so well for me in my portfolio is because we started those conversations early. What is a turn paint? What is a full paint? What is a touch paint? And set those expectations sooner rather than later so that there are no surprises when August comes around and those invoices start rolling in, right? And also early communicating with those teams like, it's July 15th. We just got a maintenance supervisor's notice. We're going to have to reconfigure our turn schedule a little bit because make readies are suddenly going to take a little bit longer. And having those conversations, I think we've had healthier turns. And, shameless plug, I know we're not supposed to do infomercials, but the sites that really embraced Easy Turn in my portfolio were the ones that finished earlier, faster, and closer to budget than their peers.
Yeah, I think everybody's starting to accept that. Anything new is always kind of tough to embrace it first. Jesse, just so you know, it came in at 57% would prefer 1 point of contact, 1 vendor return. So there you go. But any important lessons for the Turnco family that you want to share?
Yeah, the biggest surprise for me this year from turn season was the demand for experienced maintenance help. I think that we've all kind of juggled things for the last couple of years with staffing difficulties in the labor market.
Yeah.
What really surprised me was people looking to the outside, right, to bring in contractors, and not the more traditional temp labor is going to come in and change drip pans and light bulbs, but someone who really can put out a good maintenance punch. And I think that we'll see that continue in the future due to the staffing and labor issues. I think there's a recognition in our industry more than ever before of, hey, we have to turn out a good product for move-in maintenance wise. And, we've seen, hey, with the staffing troubles, that's difficult right now. So that was the biggest surprise and lesson for me.
Yeah, I just launched another survey as well, just asking what everyone's biggest pain point was. And finding contractors was 11%. Move out inspections, 22%. Vendors not showing up or not fully staffed, 33%. That was the biggest one. And supply issues with furniture, 22%. And then move-in process, 11%. So publish that poll. Well, guys, thanks so much for jumping on. I know this could be, an hour to an hour and a half long discussion. Zeb mentioned to us that this week he had a 4.5 hour conversation internally regarding last year's turn. So maybe we'll look at doing that next month. I don't know. I gotta go back and do the recruiting webinar that everybody wanted us to do after last month's shop talk. So we'll try to get that on the schedule. But thanks again so much. Any other last words of advice?
Happy holidays. Get your rest in while you can get it, because January's going to hit hard this year. Get your rest in while you can get it after your inspections are done.
I think if you aren't walking units now and getting those numbers together in January with your relationship vendors, you're going to be in trouble. So if my team's listening, a precursor to next week's team meeting there.
There you go. Zeb, anything?
Yeah, honestly, it's just do now. Don't wait. There's no need to wait for the normal turn period. Encourage your teams to turn now. Walk with your vendors now. Get your vendors on site months and months in advance and have them get familiar with the property, familiar with the room sizes, the layouts, all of those things, and work through those troubles that you did last year. So my advice is start now, do now.
Perfect. Well, guys, thanks so much. We've got Richie Lasik with Core Spaces coming on now to give us an update on what's going on with the coalition. Guys, thanks so much.
Hey, Wes, can you hear me?
I can hear you. How are things going?
Great. Thanks. Thank you again for allowing us the platform to talk here. So I'll try to be succinct and quick.
Yeah, it's been a couple of months and the survey went out. Tell us.
Yeah.
Give us an update.
Yeah, it's been a couple of months, and just quick shout out to the Hi How Are You, Foundation and ACC for doing a lot of the legwork and getting this work done, because getting a survey out to 24 companies is no small task. Almost 1 million students in the combined portfolio. So special shout out to them. It's been incredible working with them and bringing us all together. Happy to report that we reached over nearly 20,000 survey completes from college students across the country, which is incredible. And to level set with everyone, when you see data about college kids and their mental health, a lot of times that is skewed to on-campus data because there's never been an entity to connect off-campus students. And then if you start to skew that data towards, maybe a younger demographic lives on campus versus an older demographic lives off campus, right? We're uncovering insights that have never been uncovered before. So it truly is a groundbreaking effort that was just that was just done, which is really exciting to think about all the good that can be done with this data. But basically what we're doing right now is all the individual reports have been sent to the companies. So everyone has that in terms of how's your portfolio doing? What are the results there? And then in regards to the national results, Hi, How Are You Day is on Sunday, January 22nd. So we're about 5 weeks out from that, which will be hosted in Austin. So a celebration of mental health and music. And it's very fitting because, and I'm sure the press release here, Wes, in the chat after this that they just released today. But 92% of students said mental health is important to their overall well-being. And then in terms of tactics to keep that mental health top of mind, 81% said music was that tactic. 64% said socializing. So I give you some of the spark notes, which you'll see in the press release that I'll share here in the chat. But like I said, the full report that Ipsos and the rest of us are working diligently on will be released on Hi, How Are You Day. And then any member of the coalition in their communities will be able to participate virtually, through this event, which is outstanding. So again, if you're interested in joining, sponsoring us, getting involved, I'm also going to include the link to our website, and our emails are at the bottom. So please contact us. We have a list of vendors, potential operators that want to join the coalition, and we're keeping track of that. And we'll be reaching out once we get critical mass there and this report out. And before I jump off here, Wes, I just want to leave it with a quick story just to kind of paint some reality behind this data and the why behind, why we're doing this. In the past month, I've had a couple community managers reach out to me at Core, talking about a, incident on site where they're concerned about a student's mental health and, coming to me saying I need help. I don't know what to do. What are the 5 things I need to do to make, the situation better? And it goes to show a need, that we have not only at Core, but in our industry of creating those, 5 action steps and bringing in the community and bringing all these amazing resources that really are on these college campuses, but bringing a connective tissue so that, our team members that are living with these residents and working with these residents, have that confidence that, there are resources, there is help that we can bring in. And so I wanted nothing more but to, tell that community manager in the moment, hey, we got you, help is coming. And the first part of that is getting the survey out, which we did. And we're so excited to release it next month. And then thereafter, Wes, it's about leveraging that data, working with people like JED Foundation, AFSP, and other, large organizations and local organizations on creating that awesome programming and those practices to give those community managers peace of mind and then make our communities just a safer space for all.
Great. I'm excited about it. And again, when is the How Are You date?
So the Hi, How Are You Day is Sunday, January 22nd.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, Richie, thanks again. Hope we can get another update from you here in the next couple of months. I think it's fantastic touching base and seeing what's happening with that. So thank you so much.
Of course. No, it's an honor to be on here, and we'll be back soon. So thank you, Wes. All
right, take care. Well, guys, that's it for this month's Shop Talk. The next one we do have penciled in for Thursday, January 12th at 1 p.m. Eastern again. I did push out a poll asking what you guys would like for us to cover next month. Centralizing operations at 45%, DEI at 27%. So we'll try to get something with those. I did a panel at LeaseCon concerning centralization. So maybe there's something there that we can certainly talk about. Guys, if you know any of your colleagues that don't know about ShopTalk, please make sure that they know about it. They can go to shoptalk.info to register. And that way they'll be on our mailing list to get all the updates and invites from us. Guys, thanks so much. Happy holidays. We'll talk to you soon.